The sleek black SUV glided smoothly down a quiet suburban road, its engine barely making a sound. Inside, Simone Walker, a 40-year-old black woman with a commanding presence, leaned back in her seat, savoring the calm after a long day. Simone wasn't just any professional. She was the director of the FBI, one of the most powerful positions in American law enforcement. Yet tonight, her mind wasn't on high-stakes cases or national security. All she wanted was to get home, enjoy a quiet dinner, and lose herself in a good book. The road was nearly empty, with only a handful of cars sharing the space. Simone's headlights illuminated the asphalt ahead, the silence broken only by the rhythmic hum of the tires. Then, in the rearview mirror, a sudden flash of red and blue lights pulled her out of her thoughts. The unmistakable sound of a police siren followed, signaling her to pull over. Simone frowned, a mix of confusion and irritation creeping onto her face. She hadn't broken any traffic laws, her speed was well within the limit, and she hadn't missed a single sign. Still, she dutifully steered her car to the side of the road and came to a stop. As she rolled down her window, a tall white man in his early 30s approached her car. His uniform was crisp, his badge reflecting the dim glow of the streetlights. His name tag read Ethan Miller, and his expression was one of irritation bordering on hostility. Without offering a greeting, Ethan leaned down, his eyes scanning Simone and her vehicle. "You were stopped for security reasons," he said coldly, his tone dismissive. Simone straightened in her seat, her calm demeanor masking the annoyance simmering beneath. "Security reasons?" she asked, her voice measured. "Is there a problem with me or my vehicle?" Ethan didn't answer her question. Instead, he barked, "Show me your vehicle registration and driver's license." Simone hesitated for a moment before complying. She opened her glove compartment, retrieved the requested documents, and handed them over. Ethan barely glanced at them before turning on his heel and heading back to his patrol car. Sitting alone in the silence, Simone's thoughts raced. This wasn't the first time she had been treated unfairly because of her skin color. Even in her high-ranking position, she had spent her entire career breaking barriers and proving doubters wrong, but moments like these still carried a sting. Ethan returned after a few minutes, holding her documents loosely in one hand. "I need you to show me your ID," he demanded, his tone sharper now. Simone raised an eyebrow. "My car registration and driver's license are valid. I've done nothing wrong. Why are you asking for my ID?" Ethan crossed his arms, a smirk playing on his lips. "You have a suspicious attitude," he said. "A car like this, someone like you, doesn't add up." Simone felt her pulse quicken, but she kept her composure. "Suspicious attitude? What exactly are you basing that on?" Ethan shrugged, his gaze flicking dismissively over Simone's simple yet elegant jacket. "Nothing special," he muttered, "but I'm in charge here. If you don't hand over your ID, I have every right to take you to the station." Simone's grip tightened on the steering wheel. She forced herself to remain calm, her voice steady. "Officer, your request is illegal. I've provided all the necessary documents required by law. Unless you have a valid reason, I won't present additional identification." Ethan's eyes narrowed, and his smirk turned into a sneer. "Don't tell me how to do my job, ma'am. People like you shouldn't challenge authority." Simone froze momentarily at his words, the insult cutting deeper than she wanted to admit. Slowly, she met his gaze. "I'm not challenging your authority," she said, her voice firm. "I'm asking you to exercise it properly. What you're doing right now is an abuse of power, and it could get you into serious trouble." Ethan leaned closer, his voice dripping with contempt. "Trouble? You don't scare me. Who do you think you are to talk to me like that?" Simone's eyes didn't waver. "Someone who knows the law better than you do," she replied calmly. The situation was quickly spiraling out of control. Ethan, standing with his arms crossed, took a step closer to her car window, his posture radiated hostility. "I'll tell you this one more time," he growled. Show me your ID, or I'll have no choice but to detain you. Simone took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. Officer Miller, she began, her voice measured, I've already provided all legally required documents. Your demand for my ID is not only unnecessary, it's unlawful. If you insist on continuing this, you'll be held accountable. Ethan's expression darkened. The idea of being challenged was clearly intolerable to him. Accountable, he scoffed, leaning down so his face was inches from hers. You've got some nerve. You think you're above the rules, don't you? Simone's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. I don't think I'm above the rules, but I know the rules, and right now, you're breaking them. Her calm rebuttal only seemed to fuel Ethan's frustration. He straightened up, running a hand over the belt holding his holstered gun, a deliberate show of power. You're walking a thin line here, lady, he sneered. I don't have time to argue with someone like you. If you don't cooperate, I won't hesitate to use force. The threat hung heavily in the air. Simone glanced at Ethan's hand resting near his weapon, the implicit danger clear, but she refused to let fear dictate her actions. Using force against someone who's done nothing wrong, she said, her voice unyielding. You're only proving my point. You're abusing your authority. Ethan slammed his hand on the roof of her car, his patience clearly frayed. Do you know who you're talking to? He barked. I'm the law here. You're just another stopped driver. If you don't comply, I'll make sure you regret it. Simone's eyes didn't waver. You might want to rethink that, she said evenly. This isn't just about me. Your actions tonight could ruin your career. Ethan laughed, a bitter, mocking sound. My career? You really think I care about what you have to say? His hand moved closer to his gun. This is your last warning. Simone's pulse quickened, but her exterior remained calm. She knew this wasn't just about defending herself. It was about standing up to systemic abuse and injustice. Slowly, she reached for her phone, holding it up where Ethan could see it. What are you doing? Ethan demanded, his tone tinged with suspicion. Simone pressed a number on speed dial and lifted the phone to her ear. Calling someone who outranks you, she said simply. The line connected, and Simone's voice was calm but commanding. This is Simone Walker, she said. I'm being detained unlawfully by a police officer. I need the sheriff's presence immediately. Ethan's eyes widened, his confidence faltering. Who are you calling? He asked, his voice cracking slightly. Simone didn't answer him directly. Instead, she relayed her location to the person on the other end of the line. Thank you, she said before ending the call. Looking back at Ethan, she said firmly, the sheriff will be here shortly. I suggest you think very carefully about your next move. Ethan's bravado was beginning to crumble, though his hand lingered near his weapon. The gun itself stayed holstered. His face flushed with anger and uncertainty. This isn't over, he muttered, but the cracks in his resolve were clear. The flashing red and blue lights of an approaching vehicle pierced the night, growing brighter as the sheriff's SUV pulled up to the roadside. Simone remained motionless in her car, her expression calm yet resolute. Sheriff Michael Davis, a middle-aged Latino man with a commanding presence, stepped out. His tall frame and weathered face reflected decades of experience in law enforcement. Without hesitation, he strode toward Ethan, his sharp gaze assessing the situation. Miller. Sheriff Davis called out, his voice firm but tinged with disbelief. What the hell is going on here? Ethan turned to face his superior, his shoulders stiffening. Sir, he began, his voice uneven, this woman refused to cooperate. She wouldn't show me her ID, and she's being lower your tone and holster your weapon, Sheriff Davis interrupted, his tone cutting. His eyes moved to Simone, who remained composed but watchful. Sheriff Davis noticed the tension in her posture, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. Were you pointing a gun at an unarmed civilian? Ethan hesitated, then slowly stepped back, his hand falling away from his holster. I was just doing my job, he muttered defensively. Sheriff Davis narrowed his eyes. Your job doesn't include intimidating citizens or abusing your authority, he said sharply. Now, step aside. Ethan grudgingly moved away from Simone's car, his face pale with a mixture of anger and uncertainty. Sheriff Davis approached Simone, his demeanor softening slightly. Ma'am, he said, his voice calm, are you all right? Simone nodded, her tone measured as she replied, I'm fine, Sheriff Davis, but this officer's actions were not only inappropriate, they were unlawful. Sheriff Davis studied her face for a moment before something shifted in his expression. Recognition dawned in his eyes. Director Walker, he said quietly, almost in disbelief. Ethan froze, the color draining from his face. Director, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Simone's gaze didn't waver as she confirmed, yes. Simone Walker, director of the FBI. For a moment, silence blanketed the scene. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed, as though he were struggling to process the revelation. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the gravity of his actions began to sink in. Sheriff Davis turned to Ethan, his face hardening. Do you have any idea what you've done? He demanded. You stopped and harassed the director of the FBI without cause, pointed a weapon at her, and violated her rights. This is beyond unacceptable. It's a disgrace. Ethan stammered, Sir, I didn't know who she was. I was just. You were just abusing your authority, Simone interjected, her voice sharp but controlled. It doesn't matter who I am. Your behavior tonight is a clear example of systemic abuse, and it has to stop. Sheriff Davis nodded, his jaw tight. Miller, he said, his voice cold, returned to the station. Write a full report about what happened here. I'll deal with you later. Ethan hesitated, glancing between Sheriff Davis and Simone. No buts, Sheriff Davis snapped. Go now. Ethan finally relented, walking stiffly back to his patrol car. As he drove off, the tension in the air began to ease, though the weight of the incident lingered. Sheriff Davis turned back to Simone, his expression apologetic. Director Walker, he said, his tone more respectful, I can't express how sorry I am for what happened tonight. This officer's behavior does not represent our department, and I will ensure he's held accountable. Simone's gaze remained steady. Thank you, Sheriff Davis, she said, but this isn't just about me. It's about ensuring no one else has to endure what I just did. Sheriff Davis nodded, a flicker of shame crossing his face. You have my word, he said. We'll conduct a full investigation and take appropriate action. I'll make sure this doesn't get swept under the rug. Simone studied him for a moment, then nodded. I trust you'll do the right thing, she said, her voice firm. As Sheriff Davis assured her once more of his intentions, Simone knew the situation was far from over. She had stood her ground tonight, but the larger fight against systemic injustice and abuse of power was just beginning. The following morning, Sheriff Davis contacted Director Walker personally. His voice was grave as he informed her that Officer Ethan Miller had been immediately placed on administrative leave pending a full internal affairs investigation. Sheriff Davis assured her of his commitment to transparency and justice. True to his word, the investigation moved swiftly. Within a week, the internal affairs report confirmed Simone's account, citing numerous policy violations and a clear abuse of power by Officer Miller. The report also highlighted a disturbing pattern of similar complaints filed against Miller in the past, complaints that had been inexplicably dismissed or downplayed. Armed with this information, Sheriff Davis took decisive action. Officer Ethan Miller was not only fired from the police department, but also faced criminal charges for official misconduct and aggravated harassment. The news of the incident and the swift consequences sent shockwaves through the local community and beyond. Simone Walker's calm yet firm demeanor during the unlawful stop, coupled with the immediate accountability that followed, became a symbol of the fight against police misconduct and racial bias. The case sparked a series of town hall meetings and community discussions about police reform and accountability measures. Sheriff Davis, to his credit, actively participated in these dialogues, acknowledging the systemic issues within his department and pledging to implement comprehensive training programs focused on de-escalation, implicit bias, and respect for civil rights. Months later, Simone received a personal letter from Sheriff Davis. He informed her that as a direct result of the incident involving Officer Miller and the subsequent investigation, his department had undergone a significant overhaul. New policies were implemented, body cameras were mandated for all on-duty officers, and a citizen review board with real oversight authority was established. The letter conveyed Sheriff Davis's sincere commitment to rebuilding trust between law enforcement and the community. While the scars of the incident lingered, Simone found a sense of closure in the tangible changes that her experience had brought about. The swift and decisive action taken against Officer Miller, coupled with the systemic reforms within the police department, served as a powerful reminder that even in the face of blatant injustice, standing firm for what is right can lead to meaningful and lasting change. The incident became a landmark case, studied in law enforcement academies as a stark example of the consequences of racial profiling and the importance of holding officers accountable for their actions. For Simone Walker, the director of the FBI, it was a personal battle that ultimately contributed to a larger victory in the ongoing pursuit of justice and equality.